David, a good-hearted bus driver who was struggling to make ends meet, believed he was acting morally when he paused to assist a scared and lost toddler. However, rather of receiving gratitude for his kindness, he lost his job as a result. David felt as though he had no notice and nowhere to go. His life was disintegrating. A few days later, as he was starting to lose hope, the office of the governor called, introducing a turn that would alter everything. Welcome to Mystic Tales, everyone. I'm thrilled to tell you a fresh story today. David had always had a predictable existence. He got up at the crack of dawn every day, operated the same bus path. The same passengers were greeted, and returned home worn out. His salary was just enough to pay the expenses, leaving little space for further items. In spite of the difficulties, David always made an effort to remain upbeat. His sole incentive was to provide for his relatives, Sarah, his spouse, and their two small kids. David was on his customary route one chilly afternoon. It was a gray sky, and a little drizzle started to tumble. He saw a small child, about 7 or 8 years old, standing by themselves near a bus stop. The boy had a chill. He had a pallid face. As his terrified eyes widened, something felt off. On his route, David knew the regulars, and this youngster was unfamiliar. Unlike everyone else, the boy did not board the bus. Rather, he just stood there, immobilized. David paused for a second, looking at the time. He had been sprinting for a few minutes already. It's late, and his supervisor had been stern about adhering to the timetable. However, something within him wouldn't allow him to simply drive off. He pulled the door open, leaning out, and beckoned to the youngster. "My friend, are you lost?" David inquired softly, not wanting to frighten him. Slowly, the boy nodded. His eyes were filled with tears. David's heart fell. He glanced around, wishing to find a parent or someone who might be trying to find the boy. However, nobody was present. David made up his mind quickly. He disembarked from a bus, squatted to the boy's level, and inquired, "Where's your house located? Are you aware of your residence?" The boy gave a headshake. "I can't find my mom," he muttered, his voice shaking. David was aware that he could not abandon the child in this manner, despite the fact that he was violating protocol. He helped the youngster board the bus and communicated the situation to his dispatcher over radio. He wasn't prepared for the response. His supervisor, Mr. Carter, was enraged. "David, we have previously discussed this. For any reason, you cannot deviate from the schedule. You ought to have contacted the police. You're now behind, and I am receiving grievances." David attempted self-defense, stating that the child required assistance since they were afraid. Excuses, however, did not appeal to his boss. He gave David instructions to complete his route right away and handle the matter later. David couldn't bear to leave the boy behind. Rather, he completed his journey as fast as conceivable, then brought the youngster to the closest police station. Only after the youngster was David went back to the bus depot, safely in the custody of the authorities. He anticipated a word of caution, perhaps a reprimand. However, nothing could have prepared him for the subsequent events. Upon David's return to the bus depot, he was summoned right away to his boss's workplace. Mr. Carter was sitting behind his desk with a furrowed brow. "David, your actions today were inexcusable. You were not on time, disregarded explicit instructions, and now passengers are complaining to me. This is not possible in this field of work," Mr. Carter stated icily. A knot formed in David's tummy. He's been employed here for many years, and he had never created any problems. David started, "I was just trying to help the boy." However, Mr. Carter interrupted him. "That isn't the purpose. David, there's a reason we have rules. You must adhere to them, else there are repercussions." For a minute, David stood silently. Although he had always complied with the regulations, today, something had been distinct. The boy was lost, by itself, and afraid. David couldn't simply abandon him. "I get it, Mr. Carter. However, the youngster required assistance. I couldn't simply abandon him there." Mr. Carter shook his head and sighed. David, I don't possess excuses or welcome. I've already decided. You've been fired. With quick effect. The words were like a kick to David's stomach. Fired. Ultimately, these years. It was unbelievable to him. His thoughts were racing. Considering his relatives. The bills. And how he would tell Sarah about this. However, I must have this job. Please. I was only David's voice cracked slightly as he said, I'm trying to do the right thing. Mr. Carter gave him an emotionless gaze. I apologize, David. However, it's finished. You are free to gather your belongings and depart. David was dazed when he left the office. Fired. For carrying out an action, the idea was correct. It was illogical. He had assisted a kid. How was that possible? Be incorrect? However, now, he had lost his job, unsure of how he would provide for his family. That night, Sarah and David were seated at the kitchen table. He said she has everything. How had he assisted the boy? How unconcerned his boss was? As well as how, as a result, he had lost his job. Sarah sat calmly, worry shining in her eyes. David, you have my admiration. You made the correct decision. Keep them from making you feel like you didn't, Sarah murmured. David, however, could see the concern in her eyes. I am aware. But what comes next? In what way will we proceed? David inquired in a doubtful tone. We'll work things out. Of course we do, Sarah said, grabbing his hand from across the table. Days went by, and David looked for a new job nonstop. However, no matter where he looked, nothing was accessible. The gravity of his predicament increased. Heavier, every day. He started to feel as though he had erred. Similar to perhaps he ought to have complied with the guidelines. Even if it would mean letting that boy go. David was about to give up hope when, unexpectedly, something occurred. One morning, as he was seated at the table in the kitchen, gazing at the adverts in a classifieds newspaper, the telephone rang. Sarah responded to it, and her expression altered instantly. It's for you, David. She answered, It's the governor's office. Her voice was surprised. David's heart was pounding. The office of the governor? For what reason would they call him? His hands were shaking a little when he picked up the phone. Hey, this is David. The other person's voice was composed and businesslike. Mr. David, this is Rachel from the office of the governor. We are aware of the circumstances surrounding the lost youngster you assisted. The governor wants to talk to you over the phone. David could not speak. The governor desired to talk to him. David held the phone while he stood there. His thoughts were racing. He was clueless as to why the governors of the office would like to talk to him. Was the missing child at issue here? Might they be? Are you also furious with him? Despite his racing thoughts, he took a deep breath and made an effort to stay composed. Yes, I'd be delighted to talk to the governor, David answered. Despite his growing uneasiness, he spoke steadily. The woman on the other end said, Please wait a moment. While he was on hold, David could hear the soothing music. He looked at Sarah, who was seated across from him, and saw a mixture of bewilderment and worry. He nodded slightly to her, but on the inside, he had no idea what to anticipate. After what seemed like a lifetime, at last, there was a fresh voice on the line. It was profound, cozy, and brimming with power. Mr. David, Governor Mitchell is here. I wanted to express my gratitude to you directly for your actions. David was surprised for a time. He was being thanked by the governor. I simply follow my instincts, sir. I'm calling for precisely that reason, Governor Mitchell added. I was informed about what occurred, regarding the boy you assisted. The majority of people wouldn't have left the same manner that you did, especially since they can lose their jobs as a result. However, you didn't think twice. We need more people with that kind of character in the world. David's chest constricted, but not because of terror, but with appreciation. Days have passed since he had begun to doubt himself after being fired. Upon hearing these words from a high-ranking official like the governor, it meant more to him than he could express. Thank you, Governor. But as a result, I lost my job, and now I have no idea what will occur. The person on the other end paused, as though the governor was thinking carefully about what he would say next. Mr. David, I get it. And for that reason, I'm calling. You saw the kid you assisted his family means a lot to me. Actually, my nephew is that boy. His mommy. My sister had been searching for him frantically that day. She was so overwhelmed with anxiety, and when she learned that you had intervened to assist him, let's just say that she will always be appreciative. David's gaze expanded. Was the boy he had aided the nephew of the governor? He couldn't accept it. Or the odds. I didn't know. I just seen a child in need of assistance. David, still taking everything in, replied, I couldn't leave him there. And that's precisely the reason we wish to assist you. Mr. David, said the governor, losing your job for acting morally. That's something I can't overlook. A few persons have been contacted by the office, and I'd like to make you an offer. There is a job in our Department of Transportation, an excellent one, with more money than you previously received. I want to give you that position. You would assist in managing the state's public system of transportation, ensuring that everything goes as planned. That's a lot of responsibility. However, based on everything I've heard about you, I'm sure you're the best candidate. David's heart was pounding. A new position, better pay. It was everything for which he had prayed, and more. I'm at a loss for words. Governor, I'm only David stumbled, his voice full of passion, overwhelmed. David, you deserve it. This is merely a tiny token of appreciation for your generosity toward my nephew. My office will be contacting you with all the information soon. Best wishes. And once more, thank you for all that you have done. Still in shock, David ended the call. He gazed at Sarah, who had listened intently the whole time. What were their words? Sarah's eyes widened in anticipation as she asked. David grinned as he experienced a rush of relief. They made me an offer for a new position in the office of the governor, and it's far superior to operating that bus. Sarah's cheeks brightened with happiness. David, that's amazing. It's unbelievable. Neither can I, David answered, still shocked. However, I suppose that everything changed when I helped that boy. While they sat silently together, the burden that had weighed heavily on them for days gradually started to rise. David never would have thought that such a small gesture of generosity would result in something so profoundly transformative. However, it had, and when he recalled that now, with the lost youngster standing in the rain, he understood that occasionally, carrying out following the rules wasn't the proper thing to do. It had to do with listening to your heart. For David, the days that followed seemed to fly by. Following the governor's office phone call, things started to shift. As promised by the governor, David was given an official offer for his new role in the Department of Transportation. It included a substantial pay, health benefits, and an unprecedented degree of work security for David. The speed at which his life had changed was almost unbelievable to David. Only a couple of days ago, he was wondering how he would support his family after being dismissed. Now, he was getting ready to begin a job that promised more than he could have ever dreamed. David arrived at the state office building on his first day of work feeling a thankfulness that overcame him. When he entered the spacious, glass-enclosed lobby, he found it difficult to contain his smile. He was a bus driver before becoming someone directly employed by the state, all because he had paused to assist a young person. An official meeting had been scheduled by the governor's administration to greet David and acquaint him with his new position. He took a seat in the meeting room, and he couldn't resist remembering that soggy afternoon. To the young man who had been by themselves at the bus stop, everything seemed so unreal. David was presented to a group of individuals who would be collaborating with him during the meeting. Many of them were already aware of what he had done, and they were all very friendly. One of the top managers grinned and remarked, "We're fortunate to have you here, David. All of us have learned about your generosity toward the youngster. We really need someone like you here." David nodded, appreciative but still astonished by the amount of attention the tale had gotten. He spent the ensuing weeks learning and adjusting to his new position. David put in a lot of effort in his work, the same way he always has. Nevertheless, everything he did now had a purpose. He wasn't merely working to make ends meet. He belonged to something greater. He was contributing to the advancement of the system in which he had spent so many years. However, the work was not the only thing that had altered. David's perspective on the world had changed in some way. That one action of he never could have imagined the sequence of events that charity had brought about, as though the universe had rewarded him for acting morally, even if at the time it had cost him everything. A few weeks into his new position, David got a letter at his desk one day. Workplace. There was no return address on the basic envelope. Carefully, he opened it, wondering about what it could include. There was a little note inside. written by hand, using just a few phrases. "I appreciate you saving me." As he read the lines, David's heart skipped a beat. At once, he recognized who from whom. The boy, the person he assisted on that soggy day. However, no signature was present, no more justification, only those few, straightforward words. With the note in his hands, David sat there. This was not what he had anticipated. Had not hoped to hear from the boy once more. However, such remarks were more significant than he could have envisioned. They served as a reminder of his motivations and the significance of it. Later that night, while David and Sarah were sitting at home, he explained the note to her. Her eyes were warm as she smiled gently. "David, you had an impact, not only in the life of that boy, however, in your own. Take a look at everything that has occurred as a result of your decision to assist," Sarah stated. David nodded as a profound calmness descended upon him. "I suppose you're correct. It's amazing how much can change in a single, tiny instant." Sarah extended her arm and grasped his hand. "Charming has a way of returning to us, occasionally in unexpected ways." David was aware of her correctness. By assisting the boy, he had not only secured a new career, but a fresh feeling of direction. As a reminder that acting morally can result in benefits that are substantially greater than what is visible, even when it appears challenging or expensive. David started to become used to his new role as the days stretched into weeks. Life had taken a total 180-degree turn, and the difficulties he and Sarah had encountered only moments before appeared to be a faraway recollection. His new position provided him with financial stability, which meant they might be able to breathe more easily. Furthermore, for the first time in a long time, David believed that his family had a bright future ahead of them. However, money wasn't the only factor. David had discovered something even more precious, a revitalized self-esteem. He awoke each day with the knowledge that he was having an impact. He was contributing to the development of a transportation network that provided services to millions of people, making certain that efficiency and safety came first. He was no longer just another bus driver to someone in charge of something far more significant. Following a demanding workday, David was given an unexpected guest in his workplace. A woman was standing at the door, glancing a little anxious. Although her face was recognizable, David was unable to identify where he had previously seen her. "Mr. David?" Quietly, she inquired. "Yes, I'm that person. Am I able to assist you?" David answered, wanting to know why she had come. The woman moved onward, a little shaky in her voice as she said, "I am. Jake's mother is me, the boy you assisted on that particular day." A beat skipped in David's heart. Jake, the child that was lost. He had considered he had seen Jake's family numerous times, but he never thought he would see them again. The woman went on, tears welling up in her eyes. "I wanted to express my gratitude, appropriately, for your actions. On that day, I believed my son was gone. I was afraid. I'll never forget how nice you were to him. You did more than just save him. Our family was saved by you." As David listened to her, a knot formed in his throat. All he had been doing was thought was correct, but after hearing her words, he understood the full significance of that small gesture. "I'm just happy that I could assist. I noticed a young boy in need of someone, and I was unable to leave," David remarked quietly. The mother of Jake took a tiny envelope out of her bag. "I wanted to provide you with something, as a token of appreciation, for everything. It's from our family to yours, but it's not much." The woman gently placed the package in David's hands and persisted despite his hesitation. Uncertain of what to anticipate, he opened it gingerly. There was a check inside, inscribed in his name, for a substantial amount of money, more than he could have ever dreamed. When David saw the check, his eyes grew wide. I am unable to accept this," he stumbled up. "This is not necessary for you to do." Through her tears, the woman grinned. "We've already received more from you than we are able to pay back. Please, let's use this as a tiny token of our appreciation." My son's life was saved by you, and you returned mine to me in the process. I like to create certain that you and your family are well taken care of, similar to how you looked after Jake. David felt overpowered. He had never anticipated receiving anything in exchange for his actions. The work, the acknowledgement, all of it exceeded his expectations. However, currently this kind present from Jake's relatives, it seemed to be the last a puzzle component, an actual recompense for his acts of charity. When David got home that evening, he sat down with Sarah and explained the situation. Disbelief clouded her gaze as she examined the check. David, this is amazing. You've had a lot of blessings. Methods, Sarah remarked in a passionate voice. With his head still attempting to take in everything, David nodded. I'm not even sure how to express gratitude to them. However, I suppose that isn't the purpose. Perhaps, occasionally, kindness is sufficient. The world has a method of returning it to you. In the silence of their house, they sat together, feeling the burden of all that has transpired. David's life was altered in ways he could never have imagined, all because he had paused to assist a child who had gone missing. He was no longer employed. However, by doing so, he had discovered a new mission, a new profession, and now, a surprise present of money that would assist ensure his family's future. As David surveyed the life he had created, the house where he had suffered to retain, his family was the most important thing to him. He understood that occasionally, the greatest changes may result from the tiniest deeds of compassion. He was unaware that he would arrive here after a day at the bus station. However, he was thankful for every second of it, and he was certain of one thing as he sat there thinking about everything. When you are a compassionate leader, when you decide to be compassionate, even at your own expense, the universe finds a way to return the favor, occasionally, in ways you never would have thought possible. Did you enjoy this story? For more, hit the like button and sign up for Mystic Tales. Let's write a single word in the comment section to express how this tale made you feel.